Today we're heading to the mountains, specifically to the charming town of Cashiers, North Carolina, where every summer a beloved tradition comes to life in the form of the Cashiers Designer Showhouse. For decades, the event has brought together some of the South's best designers to transform a home into something magical, all while supporting a meaningful cause. Joining me today is Rowanne McKnight, founder of 6th Street Creative and the chair of the 2025 Showhouse. Rowanne has long been part of the Cashiers community, and this year she is bringing her curatorial eye and appreciation for art and interiors to the helm of the storied event. We talk about the history and legacy of the Showhouse, what makes it and its setting so special, and what visitors can expect this year. Join us for a peek behind the scenes of one of the South's most iconic summer design traditions. Welcome to Grandma's Silver, where tradition meets today. I'm Allie, your host of the Grandma Silver podcast and founder of the Grand Millennial Lifestyle. Here, we blend aesthetics with nostalgia, engaging in conversations with lifestyle brands, designers, and more to rediscover the timeless charm of the past. Join me as we journey from home to heart, illuminating the past and polishing the present with the gleam of Grandma Silver. Rowanne, I'm so excited to chat today. I'd like to just take a step back and allow you an opportunity to introduce yourself and, of course, your connection to the Showhouse.
My name is Rowanne McKnight. I am the 2025 Cashiers Designer Showhouse chairperson. I split my time between Cashiers, North Carolina and Nashville, Tennessee. I professionally have an art advisory and creative collaboration business called 6th Street Creative. I'm excited to give back to my community in this way because I really feel like it's crossroads of all the things that I enjoy. And that's working with designers, supporting our community through the arts, and bringing together like-minded people who enjoy celebrating their community through creative avenues and raising money to support all the different efforts of, marrying that historical preservation with contemporary design and art.
Well, for those who may not be familiar, could you give us a little background on what the Showhouse is, if you have some of that history to share, how long it's been going on, that kind of thing?
The Cashiers Designer Showhouse is the signature fundraiser for the Cashiers Historical Society. And this is the 28th year. Started just with a few people in the community who thought this would be a really great way to support this nonprofit that we've just put together to preserve the history and culture of Cashiers, North Carolina, and extending into the Cashiers Highlands Plateau, which is this super special area of the Western North Carolina mountains. The fundraiser goes toward supporting the educational programming of Cashiers Historical Society, and that is lectures, movies, books. They're getting ready to do a really big symposium on the history of summer camps in Western North Carolina. They just had a book signing of a Cherokee Indian writer who wrote a historical fiction and is from this area and has this best-selling book. So the programming is all over as far as interest. And it's also, this money goes toward preserving the campus. They have a beautiful historic home, the oldest home in Jackson County, of course, supporting the staff and keeping the doors open at Cashiers Historical.
One of the things that I was curious about is how they land on the properties that become the Showhouse. Do you have any insight into that process?
It's really been a combination of, for example, last year we worked with a house that had 20, 30 years old that was on a beautiful piece of property. They went in and really gutted the house and redesigned portions of the interior and just reimagined the inside of the house. And at the time, it was followed by several years of spec houses being used for the show house. And so I think there was some trepidation that this wouldn't be as interesting. And in fact, it ended up being wonderful and a wonderful example of how interior design and honoring what's already there, just being refreshed and reimagined, can be so effective. The benefit of that was that the actual landscaping and property were incredible. On the flip side of that, this year we are working with Loudermilk Homes in a custom build that is part of it. They're actually the developer of this particular area called Sarate Falls. This is the fifth house that is going into the development, and it is this rustic modern home. The site of this development was a long time family property, so it has been untouched by development, and they're really thoughtfully placing homes. This house really has these incredible new updated touches, big steel doors, but these gorgeous mountain cozy features as well, with hand masoned fireplaces and beautiful landscaping, and taking advantage of the natural landscape that is there, even with a stripped down area, that's a new lot, which will all be filled in. That's another part of what will happen with the show house, is that landscape designers are just as important as our interior designers.
You're talking about landscape, which goes back to the fact that you mentioned the Highlands and it being very special. And one of the questions that I had was sort of this place-based location. Folks are always calling the Highlands very special. Could you speak to that a little bit? I mean, could you tell, for those who are unfamiliar with the setting, why is it special?
Well, I was just speaking with the executive director of the Bascom, which is a incredible visual arts center that is set in Highlands. I mean, that's where they have their classrooms and their museum, gallery, and incredible gift shop. And we were talking about what is so special about this Cashiers Highlands Plateau. These are some of the highest elevations in North Carolina. I don't know if it's that, it's a rainforest, and so it's really, really green, or that it has just been from the earliest of times when the Scottish people settled here, and then all of the different industries. There's been this crossroads of it being a place where people are really involved because there's nothing else around. So everyone in the community has to chip in. So when it was just a gold mining town or timber, trout farms, all of those things, it was always this incredible, beautiful community where people had to do both things. They were designing their homes and taking care of them, but they were also pitching in. And it has certainly turned into a place that I know that, I grew up in New Orleans. I went to summer camp here, and it's always been a place of retreat for people to, whether it was getting away from the heat in the deep South or getting out of the industrial areas of Pittsburgh and New York and taking the train down to Western Carolina and getting away from the smog and pollution of those areas in the turn of the century. It really attracted people from all areas of the country. I think just someplace beautiful becomes inspiring to people, and it really does create your inner creative. Kind of silly to say it that way, but I think whatever those things are, if it's flower arranging or painting or cooking, things are a little bit slower here. It's a little more remote. There's not a Trader Joe's, there's not a mall. This is a place where you really are in nature. That simplicity of time, it just, whether you're an appreciator of the beauty or you're a creator of the beauty, that all comes together here.
Well, that doesn't sound really cliche or silly at all, because whether you're someone attending to glean inspiration, in the same way, environment shapes the inspiration for the creator. People seek new settings all the time, and that can inspire new ideas. You mentioned summer camp, because I was going to ask what your personal connection to the region is. Was that something that you've just kept coming back ever since childhood?
Yes, I attended Camp Marywood, which is here in the Cashiers area. The next little village over is Sapphire, North Carolina, and it really just flows right in. It's only about 2 miles down the road from the center of Cashiers. That camp has been going, I think it's 110 or 115 years, a camp for young girls and young women. And it was a wonderful retreat for me. And I think in a camp that was really rooted in tradition. The girls still wear uniforms that are based on what they wore when it was founded. Their tagline is a place of rarest beauty. And I think certainly what I've appreciated as a child because definitely coming out of New Orleans, which was amazing, but it was like really hot and sweaty and city. And to come up here, it was like, oh my gosh, that I wear a sweater in the morning to breakfast. I just fell in love with the mountains. I fell in love with their whitewater program. I grew up on water, but not whitewater. And I just loved it. And I stayed and came back as a staff member. And my husband and I ended up getting married at the camp.
Wow. Oh, I
And
love
then
that.
when we had children, he had gone to camp in Western North Carolina as well, Camp Mondamon and closer to Asheville. We sent our kids to camp, but our girls really, really loved Camp Marywood, and they've both gone back as staff members. So we had this organic reason to keep coming back to the region. And every time we would be here, we would say, we want to be here, not just
Yeah.
dropping off at camp and having a night like this. We love the community. There's something special about whether it's in the water or the air or the rain or whatever, but there's something special about this area. We became part of the community in 2017. And as our kids have gotten older and left home for college and work, we now split our time. I mean, a lot of people are here full time, but
Yeah.
we both have the ability to work remotely. So we still love Nashville and we have our friends and family there, but we are here quite a bit.
Oh, I love that. And I love that the fact that you got married there.
Yeah.
That says something too, because I think strange background, but I was a former wedding planner. And so I often, I always like to hear where people get married because I actually think that says a lot about what they consider home, that intimacy. So
Yeah.
that's a really fun connection. And I think that to be in a space and now helping to chair a home and share a space that is so special to you is just lovely. I love that story.
Yeah.
Lots of questions about the behind the scenes. I don't know that I asked how you got involved with the show house itself.
It is a volunteer job, it's responsibility. And this year, I'm actually chairing it by myself. I have some amazing friends and associates that I've asked to chair different parts of this. So it is not just a single pull. Cashiers Historical is a tiny but mighty staff, and they are so incredible. So they've been wonderful. The volunteers, there's a lot of repeat people who've been doing it for years, or they volunteer certain days with their pack of friends or their bridge group. Their college friends come in town and they all help out in one of the events. But truly, I got involved because my friends were involved and they said, I think you'd enjoy this. Like, could you help? And so last year I worked as the designer liaison. And through my work, interact with designers a lot. I have relationships. I knew some of the designers that were going to be involved. I actually knew the homeowner. So I was like, you know what? I'll do it. I think I can help with that. They said, would you think about doing the whole thing next year? So it was kind of by accident, but also I just am a big believer that it's both things. Obviously, we're all trying to make a living and make a life, but it is really critical to give back to a place that has given so much to you. And it's really gratifying to be able to give back in a category that is so synced with what I'm interested in and what I enjoy doing.
Now, and this is a loaded question because
Yeah.
it's a very long process, but could you talk us through a little bit of the process of last year wraps up?
Yeah.
I have to imagine it's a pretty quick segue into getting going for the
Mhm.
next year. So, how does that break down? I mean, do you have to find the location first? Are you looking at anything thematic?
It's definitely chicken and egg. I mean, you're correct. We partner with Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles, a really incredible interiors magazine, and we could not do it without them. I mean, they are such a marquee, beautiful publication that designers want to be involved in. What everybody is super synced on is that we want this to be like super high caliber. We want people to be excited when we call and say, we'd like to invite you to be a part of the show house, that it really is an honor, but it's also still a great expense for a designer to be
Yeah.
involved. So we take that seriously. We know that it isn't just, oh, I'm so fired up to be a part of this, and they are, but it also is something of true consideration of their time and their resources. Some of the stuff is sponsored, but their time is not sponsored. We're just so appreciative. So some of that is just making sure, like, have we wrapped up everything in the past year? And truly now that for many years it was just volunteers to volunteers. They have a staff in place as of the last few years. They're really working with their board of directors and the local real estate agents. Some of that is like a word of mouth of like, do you know someone who might be interested? I mean, we're already working on now that we've realized, I was like, the farther out you can calendar, some of these road bumps can be eliminated. I'm so impressed that all these women would just get together and like pull this thing off. I mean, it's so much work. But now we've got things that we're working on in the show house 2 years from now. The house is huge. Things get committed to. It's a resort area. So maybe someone decides they want to sell the house. It's been sitting for a minute and then they sell it. And the new owner's like, I don't want a show house. I want to move in and be in the house this summer. So we had that happen. The good news, bad news is that Cashiers is now post-COVID, like many resort areas, the real estate doesn't sit. And it's really hard. That
you can't think about it. Yeah.
Yes. I mean,
there's no,
it really changed. And so I guess what that is there's all of this, like, yes, here's a model of how it can work, but all that has to be fluid. How do you twist and turn with the changes in your community while still preserving like the essentials? That part seemed a little complicated, but our partners in Loudermilk came and said, we have a great house. We think it would really be a nice show house. And then from there, it's also trying to gather our designers. So we have 12 different designers. That is in partnership with Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles, in partnership with Cashiers Historical, in partnership with our committee of how do you balance celebrating your local designers and Cashiers and Highlands, celebrating designers who've been involved in the past in show houses. So because that's sort of nice. It's like the big brother or big sisters showing the other designers, like, this is how they do it. We also really want to celebrate the other, younger designers that have made quite a footprint for themselves in areas that really are feeders to Cashiers. So this year we've got designers from Augusta, Georgia, Charlotte, Greenville, South Carolina, Charleston, South Carolina. So we always like to have our designers from Atlanta because we're involved with Atlanta Homes and Lifestyles, but that is certainly our biggest feeder city. It's only 2.5 hours away.
So they're applying to participate. You're narrowing a pool down annually. Is it really like you're pulling from those concepts to make sure you're kind of hitting all the different points, like making sure we have a veteran designer, making sure we have one that represents this area, this demographic, this age group?
To date, there's not a formal application process. That's something that's on the table, is how do we be sure we know who's actually interested? Sometimes some of these show houses, you have the same 12 and they've been doing it for 12 years, and that can tend to feel stale or maybe not as inclusive. We don't really have a theme. This year, this hasn't happened in the past, but this year, because the builder of the house it's a build and design group. Loudermilk Homes is husband and wife team, and he is an architect and builder, and his wife is an interior designer. And so they really sell these houses in particular, have more of a completed interiors than some other new homes have. For example, they require that every designer, put in their design boards early. We haven't typically asked for that. I mean, usually it's like, you can do whatever. And so that can be somewhat disjointed because you might have like pink flowers in one area and then it's all silver mirrors in another. But it can feel
the lack of cohesion.
It's not terrible because you are saying, like, I am an individual designer and I'm an individual designer. This house will have more of a coordinated palette. When they decided to do this, they had already assigned lighting. Some of the other fixtures and finishes were already decided and purchased. The designers do have an option. We said, we want you to be your creative selves, but this is the general palette. Here's what will be in each room. And you can choose to use this lighting or you can provide your own, but it's going to have to go back to this lighting. Or the designer might say, actually, we want yours. So there was kind of this back and forth, but this particular time has been a wonderful example of they have almost always said, oh, actually, that's great. I mean, they've been willing to make a lot of changes and move, light switches and whatever to make it work for these designers to really have their creative expression. But the house will be for sale. And so the idea is that, you want people to walk in and be like, this is so beautiful. Maybe it's not what I would have chosen, but I want it all. If it sells, that person will have first right of refusal to purchase anything in the room. Past that, the designers can sell everything in the rooms will be for sale that they want to be for sale.
Okay.
If they're using their grandmother's favorite, bowl, this particular piece is not going to be for sale, but everything else is.
Yeah.
Or
I love that.
yeah,
Well, and I like the cohesion because designers tend to just kind of be on the same wavelength a lot of the time and
yeah,
still exert their own authentic flair. But
uh-huh,
I do also appreciate that cohesion. So I think that will be really interesting actually to, see the
yeah,
images and get a feel for how that all comes together. I also think that having a designer on the back end at that level probably helps because they're speaking to the designers that are participating,
right.
kind of like, helping to advocate for them in
Yeah.
ways that perhaps if that wasn't the case, it might be a little more challenging. So that's great. Could you speak to what you're hoping attendees get out of visiting this year's show house?
I hope that the visitors will be excited and inspired by the designers that have been invited to see their use of antiques and contemporary fabrics and finishes and furniture. We've always typically had, well, not always, but in the past years, we've had some art displayed in maybe the garage area or an extra room. This year, we're going to do an art auction for the first time. And we're
Oh, how
inviting artists,
cool.
not only in Western Carolina, but anywhere in the country to be a part of this and donate a 12 by 12 painting and have an art gallery sitting area. So a designer will design the gallery. The walls will be paintings that are available that you can bid on or, you can purchase
I
outright.
love that.
Yeah, so we're really excited about that. And we feel like that's something that'll be sustainable for years to come and a fun way for artists to be involved and then have all these extra eyeballs on their work that are not only attending, but the designers too. That is exciting. The other really cool thing that we do is for the entire week, we have a vendor shops area that is in the town center at the Village Green. I think we've got like 15 different vendors that come in, and some of those are artists, they're antique stealers, but then we've got a woman who does vintage jewelry. Then we also have like really beautiful men's clothing designer, a women's clothing designer. Charleston Shoes will be there. It's just a whole mix of things that we feel like people who are enjoying the show house will enjoy these vendors. We're starting to have something called the Shop the House, where there'll be items that are inspired by the house, or, maybe if there's a bowl, not to use a bowl again, but a plate or a bowl in the kitchen that it sells immediately. And someone said, oh, I really wanted that. Well, we've got some more and they're going to be available at the shops at the village.
Well, I love that because
Yeah.
especially with it being an inspirational space for people to walk through, it's like a literal, I mean, you could literally be inspired and walk away with it and
Yes.
integrate it immediately into your space.
Yeah. And be like, oh, I love those pillows. We have more of them, they're over there. And then we have programming all through the week. So we have paid events. So we have an opening night event for our benefactors. Opens officially on Friday, the 22nd of August, but this is the night before. Then we've got a designer panel luncheon at a beautiful location here called Canyon Kitchen. And we've got two amazing architects, one from Highlands, one from Atlanta, and two designers, Barry Benson from Charlotte, North Carolina, and James Farmer, who is here in Georgia, North Georgia. So we've got paid stuff like with that. We have an author, Ann Byrne, coming in to do a cooking
I just
demonstration.
interviewed Anne.
She's so great.
She
Yes,
was
also
amazing.
Nashville. And so that will be an event. And then I've just finished the meeting. We're having a really amazing local floral designer. We're going to do a luncheon. She's going to lecture on floral design, and then everyone will get to do, an arrangement of their own. So those will be little fundraiser events all through, a young preservationist night where it'll be barbecue and bluegrass. And then we'll have lectures that are happening all through the week that will be free of charge and happening at this Village Green area. Back to the Bascom, we have the executive director of the Bascom and an area artist who also lives in Cashiers, who really developed his love of ceramics in retirement and is now one of their top artists. But we have someone coming and do candle making, someone talking about botany. There'll be something kind of on every interest level, just promoting the culture of Cashiers and letting people know what is happening right here.
And you mentioned art, which I love is being integrated.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask, because of course art is a big part of your background, which I actually think is quite unique. It adds something like a different layer, maybe in the way that you interact with art. So I didn't know if that has influenced at all your approach to your role or how you view the visitor experience or anything like that.
I definitely think it has. Art has always, been a part of the show house. Obviously, it's part of people's interiors, but it has been something that has been incorporated and it's part of the vendor area for these artists to come in. But I just felt like there was more to that, and it's such a wonderful way to celebrate your community. To me, art elevates a community, it elevates a space, it creates a conversation. Even if you don't like the piece, it's making you think about the art, right?
Right.
So, yeah. And I feel the same way about design. If you walk in a room and you're like, I would never do this, I cannot stand what they did. Well, it's making you consider,
yeah, you're still reacting.
What would I do for wall cover? I don't like the way that makes me feel, but you know what I think I would like? I think I would like stripes. I just think it's something that it's always on the continuum of how people experience a space. And I think it's something that can just continue to hopefully benefit the artist, but it can also benefit, an organization.
One of my very last questions is surrounding your own personal experience, because you mentioned that you have a long history with the area. As you also mentioned, it is kind of a resort town. So do you have recommendations or things that you look forward to in the summer months?
I try and be outside as much as I can. The trails, waterfalls, lakes. I know you can be just as happy sitting on a porch, reading your book, but I find that just enjoying the natural resources here that are just different from any other part of the country. And actually people from the Pennsylvania area love it because I haven't been to the Poconos, but they said it actually has a similar feel.
Okay.
To the Poconos. So I love to be outside, and I always think that Cashiers and Highlands are great about whether it's the show house or other programming, not just with Cashiers Historical, but bands love to come here. Chefs love to come. There's always some sort of little festival or gathering. They're having the airing of the quilts. Cashiers Historical is having that this weekend, and I can't wait to go. I love to collect quilts. That's something that's really more wholesome, and I love having just the balance of spending time outside, spending time in the community, but also encouraging everyone to stretch and get a little edgy too. Enjoy all the things that can come when we bring that talent into town.
I just thank you for taking the time to chat today. I'm super excited to see all the pictures next year. Yeah, next year maybe. I'm of course encourage folks to go out and see it for themselves and send me pictures of your experience, and I'll live vicariously through them.